Hello, my name is Mark Amengual, and I'm an associate professor in applied linguistics in the Department of Languages and Applied Linguistics at the University of California, Santa Cruz. And I'm delighted to interview a colleague of mine, Kimberly Adilia Helmer. Kim teaches multilingual writers in the UCSC writing program, where she also has designed their three course sequence for teaching English for academic purposes. Before coming to UCSC, Kim taught at the City University of New York, where she received 2 teaching awards. She got her PhD in second language acquisition and teaching from the University of Arizona, where she focused on linguistic anthropology and pedagogy. There, she also won a composition teaching award and doctoral research award. She also holds an MA TESOL from the Monterey Institute of International Studies, now the Middlebury Institute. She has worked with Fulbright scholars, migrant farm laborers, Japanese and Mexican business professionals, and now primarily Chinese international students, teaching all these learners English for their specific context. She brings this varied experience to the Spanish heritage language learning context. Kim is also a Spanish heritage language learner, which contributes to her unique positionality regarding her first book project that we will be discussing right now. Kim, welcome.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much for doing this interview with me.
A pleasure. A pleasure. So let me start with some questions for you. How did you first become interested in studying Latina student engagement and learning?
Well, Mark, it was somewhat of an accident because, as you read in my bio, my background is working with multilingual learners learning English as an additional language. And Spanish as a topic, Spanish as a research agenda was absolutely not on my radar because maybe typical with heritage language learners, I never thought, basically my Spanish, in my mind, my Spanish sucked and, I wouldn't be doing research in that area because I don't have the expertise, so I had this kind of inferiority. So working in Spanish language, that just was no way something that I was going to do. So I had been working in English. But when one day, and so how I got involved was really serendipitous. I was there, and I explained this in the book as well, this kind of origin story. But I was at a farmer's market, at a street fair, and I saw this sign there was this booth, and it said place-based learning. And it was a charter high school and that had this booth giving information. And I walked over because place-based learning sounded very much like experiential learning, which was something that I was very interested in, something that I do in my own teaching. And so I thought I was really curious. And so I went over and went to the booth and I talked to one of the founding teachers there, and we started talking, and she was telling me about her school. And I thought, wow, what an interesting school. And it was going to be opening. And I thought, what a wonderful project to go to a school and see how culture started from day one and just kind of investigate that. So I went in because teaching is teaching is my passion, one of my passions. And I thought about doing research at the school would help me to be a better teacher. So I thought, this sounds like a super innovative school, super interesting curriculum. And I got permission to do research there. And so in the first days that I was there, I was, roaming in and out of classrooms, not really knowing what my exact research question was going to be. And that's where I landed in what they were calling at the time advanced Spanish. And so but then eventually they realized it was a heritage language class. So I was in that classroom observing, and I actually was kind of interested because, again, I, had never studied formally Spanish. So I was for the first time really in a Spanish language classroom being taught Spanish, and I thought I was really interested, but the kids in the class hated it. And so then I was thinking, why are they hating this? This is for some of them, their first language. Yet they were really disappointed in the class, complaining, this is not what I signed up for, and I already speak Spanish, why should I take this class, things like that. And I really wanted to get to the bottom of why they were resisting Spanish so much. And so that's how I got involved. It was kind of accidental. And lo and behold, I end up studying who I am, which it was completely accidental. I didn't think that was going to happen, but it did. And I'm really grateful for it because it kind of changed the way that I see myself, and it changed the way, it just changed my life, really, to be quite honest. And I had no idea that was going to happen. But working with international students or working with Generation 1.5 Latino students in the United States was always something that I was already doing. And like providing those students a good education was always on my radar. But I did it doing academic English. I had no idea I was going to be thinking about academic Spanish. So that's kind of a long answer, but
that's fascinating.
Kind of a journey that I was on.
That's very interesting, and what a great way to connect to your research interest, right? Your research agenda, and that's what I was thinking is that, yourself as a Spanish heritage language learner, how did that inform your research?
Well, as I was doing, my literature review and diving into the topic, I realized that a lot of the people doing research were either, Spanish had been their dominant language, or they were a foreign language learner learning Spanish, and they were really highly competent. Everyone, I really admire the people in this field who have learned Spanish as a foreign language because they're so competent and they speak so well, and which was also intimidating to me though. But as a heritage learner, what I bring to the picture is that all that intimidation that I'm feeling and expressing right now, even in this interview, is something that not everyone would completely understand. Mm-hmm. So when students in class and that I was studying, like if they're not wanting to speak Spanish, I totally understand psychologically, emotionally, what's going on, and all that linguistic insecurity that you might be feeling, or the fear that your ethnic identity is going to be negated because you're linguistically not presenting, like a fluent speaker, like, oh, you should be so fluent, that's your culture, that's your heritage. So I bring that to this research that there's not that many of us, if you can believe it, that are heritage learners, that are, we're still learning our heritage language, who are also doing this research. So I kind of bring that perspective and that kind of lived, embodied experience of the heritage learner. So I think I can bring that my positionality, I think, informs my book, because I can kind of understand what's going on because I've been there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Kim, so why did you feel this was an important book to write?
Well, as I was doing the research and doing the literature review and studying up on the topic, I realized there weren't that many, first of all, ethnographies on the topic. Very few that were set in a charter school and that were looking at the learners in two contexts. So I saw them in the Spanish heritage language class, and then they stayed as a cohort and they went to their humanities class, which was, social studies and English. And by seeing them in those two contexts, it really gives a fuller picture of what's going on. Because if I had only stayed in the Spanish class, I would have seen resistant learners. And I could have said, oh, well, they just don't care. They don't care about learning. But because I got to see them in their humanities class, where they were very engaged, raising their hands, participating, not acting out, then we know it's not them. It's the pedagogy, or it's the way the teachers are treating them, or other emotional things, like linguistic insecurity, or, feeling marginalized, or, all these other things that I'm also talking about in the book. So it's presenting kind of like a more complicated picture than maybe a journal article, let's just say, where you can't really give all the details, all the context and the historical, because I do talk about history, and I contextualize it. because I'm trying to give kind of like a macro perspective and also a micro perspective. The micro perspective in the classroom, but knowing that classroom is part of especially in the Southwest, in a place where Latinos or Mexican origin people in particular are marginalized and the language is stigmatized. So I can bring that all in. And I just don't think you can do that in a journal article. I think you need a full book to be able to do that. And I'm able to present, you know, a really larger picture of this research.
Yeah, great.
And also, the other thing that really struck me was that, you know, Mexican origin people, you know, well, they're second now in terms of the growing demographic after Chinese, but they're the largest demographic group represented in K-12, but they have the highest dropout rate. So that statistic alone is horrible. And what can we do in schools to help students stay in school? Of course, they're leaving for many different reasons. But one of them can also be, you know, pedagogy. So how can we offer Mexican origin students, for example, or other Latinos in general, you know, a more engaged curriculum to help them want to stay in school? So that was another reason why I thought it was important to be writing this book, because if you have so many Mexican origin students in the K-12 system, and if they have to take a Spanish class or for their language requirement, it's going to be that Spanish class is going to be a de facto heritage language class. So people who are teaching Spanish, for example, in the high schools, need to really understand the background of heritage language learners, to understand psychologically, emotionally how they're feeling, and also getting some pedagogical tools to help them with those learners, which the book provides also.
Very important information. And I would love you at this point if you could summarize some of the pedagogical suggestions that you offer in the book.
Sure, I will, yeah, of course. So I do borrow a lot from my own teaching experience and training and working with English for academic purposes. And so I bring that in. And so one of the things that I talk about is content-based instruction, because one of the things that was happening, and also authentic materials, I'll just, you know, because the students in the Spanish class, they were hating their textbooks because they were boring and they were teaching linguistic forms of Spanish that were irrelevant, like the vosotros. No offense, Mark. Mark is from Spain. But they were like, why are we learning this? It doesn't make any sense. So I would say authentic materials are super important, and creating content that is really student-centered. So those are some things that you could do. And I use, the school was doing place-based learning. So I also think place-based learning is like when you set your curriculum within the geographic context, historical, social, linguistic context of the region that you're in. I found that could be a really good heuristic for designing curriculum. So if you're in Santa Cruz, or if you're in the Southwest, or if you're in New York City, you use that context to help you design your curriculum. And that's place-based learning. And you really connect that to community, which is somewhat similar to culturally responsive pedagogy. So I found all of those things to be really helpful. And so in the book, I explain these things. And giving the reader a lot of examples and details. And I also use my own experience as a composition teacher, teaching writing to, academic writing to multilingual learners. And I can bring that into the book too. So I can talk about writing, and I can talk about rubric design and things like that. That just my other specialty, I can bring that in. So I have a full chapter that's devoted to the pedagogy of heritage language learners, which it's pretty detailed, compared to some other things that are out there. I'm not to disparage any of that, but there's a lot of, bring all my experience teaching English language learners. I think teaching the advanced even English language learner is very relevant to the heritage language learner, because a lot of times if you're learning English, for example, in the United States, it's highly contextualized. And the Spanish that the heritage learner is highly contextualized also. So I think they really come together really well. My background in English for academic purposes really works well in the Spanish or the foreign language classroom, especially the heritage language classroom, which you might not necessarily think, but it really does work.
Yeah. Thanks, Kim. I mean, one thing that strikes me about the book is that even though it's theoretically sophisticated, it also has a very personal tone. So could you explain why you took this approach in structuring the book?
Well, I wanted to write a book that I thought would be fun to read on one, and also what was happening is I started to feel very uncomfortable also when I was writing it, because the behavior in the Spanish class, the students, I mean, they were acting out, and some of the pedagogy in there I had problems with. Yet I know everybody at the school was trying their very, very, very best. So I needed to present these, this kind of personal part, explaining like everyone's trying their best, trying to, somewhat soften, try to explain, just like we're all human beings, just trying to do our best. And so I talk about that. And then sometimes I also say, but I have to be honest with what I saw. And because as myself, as a heritage language learner, I got turned off to Spanish. I never took it. I never took Spanish in college, in high school. I mean, I took it in high school, but we didn't learn it. I was thrown in a class with a soccer team, taught by the soccer coach, and we didn't study Spanish. So I felt like, oh my gosh, what a wasted opportunity. If I had been excited in school about the Spanish language and maybe had taken classes in high school or even taken it in college, to get beyond my more conversational skills and to become, be able to read and write really well, it could have changed the trajectory of my career. I could have been feeling, very like, yes, I'm a member of the Spanish speaking community, but I still don't feel that way because I don't have that academic background in the language. So it really could have opened a lot of doors for me, but I don't have that opportunity. So I really felt like we cannot be shutting the doors on these high school students. We need to give them, especially, marginalized communities, every opportunity. And if, being able to use academic Spanish, for example, I don't want to say academic Spanish because that's just a shorthand to being, highly literate and you be able to read and write really well in another language for a variety of purposes. Just like we teach American kids at my university how to do writing, how to write a good essay or write a research paper, to be able to have those abilities, to be able to do that in a lot of different languages, just, it just opens doors for you. So that was important for me.
Definitely. And yeah.
So we're talking about the personal style also, I wanted to be, I love the ethnographies that give you kind of more behind the scenes, a real feel for the community and not completely academic in tone. So it's kind of interesting that you get kind of like more, I'm not going to say creative nonfiction. I wish I could say I can write creative nonfiction, but I'm trying. So if we can have kind of open up that way and then get into the more academic and then maybe switch into the more personal, because I'm so personally involved in the book because it's really kind of my story as well. And I got to know the students so well, and I got to know the faculty so well, and the school was in my neighborhood. So it was personal.
Fantastic. Well, Kim, I mean, thank you so much for writing this book. And I think it's a must read for anyone that works on heritage languages and linguistic ethnography. A fantastic really production you've done for the field. I'm really happy about that, and happy to see the text coming out. So now what
Thank
I'm
you.
thinking is, what is your next step? What's your next research project?
Well, I might, since after writing the book, I feel like I want to take a little bit of a breather, but I have been collecting data with the Chinese language learners, not Chinese language, Chinese students who are learning English as an academic language. So I might do some work in that. I probably will be doing work in that. But in terms of heritage language work, I have a dream project. And my dream project would be, so my family, I didn't mention that my family's from Nicaragua. So my dream project would be to be able to spend a year in my heritage country and do a type of autoethnography there, perhaps putting myself in different communities in my heritage country and go and meet the family members that are still there and write kind of a fun but academic book as well, and also do like in traditional diary studies where I can be taking a look at my own acquisition process. Because living in California, I don't use the bolseo, but I thought, wow, wouldn't that be interesting to see at what point I could actually acquire it? That could be a question. And also to see about my pronunciation, how will that shift? Could it shift? Am I too old for that to shift? So I would want to be doing that as well. So kind of like in the Penny Eckert tradition of linguistic anthropology, but having myself being part of that study. And I think it would just be so much fun to go there and live there and really get immersed in my heritage culture, because I haven't done that. The Nicaraguan community is so small in the United States and in California. Whenever I meet someone from that heritage, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. But so the only community that I have ever had has been my own family. So I would love to go and understand the culture, experientially, and then write a book about it, about, a heritage learner going back to the heritage country and doing an acquisition study there. And that's my dream project. And my niece is learning Spanish as well. And I asked her if she would want to come with me so we could have a couple of generations going there, and we could be studying also her language acquisition in the heritage country. So that's kind of my dream project that I would love to do, that just makes me excited, versus, well, I love working with students here in the United States, but the other just I would do anything to be able to do that project. So I want to make some connections, but there's a lot of ground to cover to make that dream come true.
That would be a fantastic, very original contribution, comparing second and third generation heritage speakers and relearning basically the language and also the regional variety. So fantastic.
Yes.
That sounds very, very interesting. Well, thank you so much, Kim, for your time and for answering these questions. I'm sure we've all learned a lot about this book, and I can't wait to dig into this book again.
Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate your questions. It was fun to talk about the book again, because it's been a few months since I've put it down.
Fantastic. Well, you take care.
All right. Thank you so much.